Don't forget to give this video a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel not to miss new favorite stories. He approached me from behind, and at that moment I knew everything was about to change. I hadn't expected an ordinary evening to turn into a chain of events that would completely upend my life. That unexpected moment marked the start of something new, pulling me into a whirlwind where every decision could be crucial. The first rays of the morning crept through the gauzy curtains of my downtown loft in Portland, heralding a day brimming with quiet promise and unexpected turns. I awoke not to the monotonous blare of an alarm clock, but to an unconventional radio broadcast that mixed ambient melodies with snippets of poetic musings, a reminder that life, when seen from a different angle, can be an art form. The vibrant sounds swirled around the room, nudging me gently out of sleep into a state of alert wonder. In this space where every detail, from the scattered vintage records to the carefully chosen abstract paintings, told its own story, I felt an intrinsic connection to the pulse of the city. I shuffled to the kitchenette, not with the expectation of a regular espresso, but with an appetite for something radically new. I blended an array of fresh ingredients into an experimental smoothie, each sip a fusion of unexpected flavors that danced on my tongue. The concoction, as audacious as the morning radio's eclectic selection, felt like an ode to reinventing daily rituals. Almost as if scripted by fate, my phone buzzed with a call from a dear friend, the tone warm and inviting. Instead of delivering the typical barrage of morning headlines, her voice was a gentle invitation to explore the day with fresh eyes, a secret shared over laughter and recollections of previous adventures. That call was a small spark, igniting the underlying sensation that today was destined to deviate from the mundane. Leaving my apartment, I stepped into a city that pulsed with life. The streets of Portland, with their hidden nooks and unexpected art installations, always managed to evoke a sense of mystery and allure. I walked briskly, my mind still swirling with the early morning's odd yet inspiring mix of sounds and flavors. With each step, the world seemed to whisper of possibilities, of moments that could redefine a lifetime with a single conversation or encounter. There was an unspoken promise in the air that day, an anticipation of serendipity that made the ordinary feel extraordinary. Every face in the crowd, every casual smile from a stranger, hinted at stories untold and adventures waiting just around the corner. The city itself seemed to breathe with a rhythm all its own, inviting me to abandon my routine and engage fully with the unknown. As I merged with the flow of urban energy, I realized that the start of the day was not just a beginning, but a declaration. An open challenge to embrace every twist, every nuance of life with both hands. The spark of that unconventional morning had ignited a subtle yet insistent curiosity, one that promised that even in the smallest moments, there lay the potential for profound transformation. By mid-morning, the city was well and truly awake, and I found myself drawn into the vibrant rhythm of its streets. I met Mark at a cozy, sunlit bistro tucked away in a side alley, a favorite spot for those in the know. The establishment boasted eclectic decor, a mix of modern minimalism and nostalgic relics that seemed to mirror the dual nature of our lives, the familiar intertwined with the unexpected. Mark greeted me with a warm, almost mischievous smile. As we settled into a corner booth, the conversation began with the comfort of shared routine. However, it soon took a delightful detour. "You wouldn't believe what happened at work yesterday," Mark confided, his eyes alight with an excitement that was both contagious and puzzling. His voice, rich in irony and disbelief, recounted an unusual exchange with a colleague, one involving a series of odd events that unfolded in the most improbable fashion. "Imagine," he continued, lowering his voice as though divulging a closely guarded secret. "A routine meeting that spiraled into a bizarre account of misplaced documents, misinterpreted signals, and a coffee spill that turned into a full-blown comedy of errors." His tone was animated, every word punctuated with a touch of incredulity. The narrative wove through the conversation like an unpredictable melody, a blend of absurdity and genuine wonder that made the mundane seem magical. I listened intently, absorbing the layers of irony interspersed with a genuine curiosity about the human capacity to find humor even in chaos. Mark's tale wasn't just about a simple mishap, it was a microcosm of our daily lives, a reminder that every moment harbored the potential for unexpected brilliance. As he described the puzzled expressions of his coworkers and the surreal reactions that followed the incident, I couldn't help but feel that his recounting was a subtle prelude to the surprises that lay ahead in our day. The dialogue between us unfolded naturally. I shared a few thoughts about the strange beauty in everyday mishaps, a notion that resonated deeply with the unpredictable buzz of the morning. Mark's responses were never repetitive. Each comment carried a fresh twist, a new perspective that challenged the notion of routine. Our conversation flowed effortlessly, branching off into musings about the serendipitous nature of human interactions and the inherent poetry in life's unscripted moments. Every exchange felt like a small revelation. The deeper we delved into our discussion, the more I realized that our meeting was not merely a casual breakfast, but a gateway to a broader, richer world. The banter between us sparked a recognition. Life's true essence lay in its spontaneity, in the dialogues that unraveled the layers of our experiences. With every laugh and thoughtful pause, I sensed that this day was sculpting itself into a tapestry of unexpected encounters and meaningful connections. As the morning light softened into a gentle warmth, I left the bistro with a heart buoyed by Mark's extraordinary narrative. The promise of further surprises seemed to hang in the air, a reminder that the best moments often come wrapped in the most unforeseen dialogues. The city, with its myriad voices and stories, was calling, and I felt ready to answer. The afternoon unfolded with the promise of culinary adventure. In my cozy kitchen, the stage was set for an experiment that felt as daring as it was unplanned. I had decided to host a casual get-together for a few neighbors, a spontaneous invitation to share not just a meal, but a slice of life as rich and unpredictable as the city itself. The countertop was adorned with an array of ingredients, exotic spices, freshly picked herbs, and vibrant vegetables that lent a spectrum of colors to the scene. I felt an inner thrill at the prospect of crafting something unique, a dish that could encapsulate the serendipity of the day. As I chopped and stirred, the air slowly filled with the aroma of sizzling garlic and a hint of citrus. I was deep in my creative trance, blending traditional techniques with my own experimental twists, when a soft knock at the door interrupted my concentration. Opening it, I found a man whose presence seemed almost scripted into the narrative of this day. A local chef, known in the neighborhood for his innovative recipes and unorthodox methods. His eyes sparkled with a mixture of curiosity and a knowing smile that suggested he, too, had been drawn into the unexpected magic of the moment. I couldn't help but notice the commotion and that enticing smell. He said, his voice warm and laced with genuine interest. "I'm Matteo, and I was wondering if you might need a hand or even some inspiration." His tone was friendly, yet carried an undercurrent of a shared passion for the culinary arts. There was no preamble or small talk. He came with a purpose, as if he had been waiting for this very moment to lend his expertise. I welcomed him in, grateful for the unanticipated collaboration. The kitchen, already buzzing with the energy of creation, seemed to expand with his arrival. Matteo surveyed the ingredients with an artist's eye, quickly pointing out subtle pairings that I hadn't considered. A dash of smoked paprika here, a sprinkle of fresh basil there. As we moved in a seamless dance of shared creativity, our dialogue was as spontaneous as it was precise. Every comment sparked a new idea. Every suggestion opened up another culinary avenue. Amid our lively banter, neighbors began to trickle in, drawn by the magnetic pull of an unfolding impromptu feast. Their curious glances and excited murmurs blended into the ambiance, creating a tapestry of voices that resonated with the pulse of the day. One neighbor, an elderly woman with a lifelong passion for food, recounted a fond memory of a dish that had once brought her entire community together. Another, a young man with a keen interest in sustainability, questioned the origins of our ingredients and the stories behind them. Each conversation, each shared smile, added layers of authenticity to the experience. The kitchen, once just a space for solitary experimentation, had transformed into a vibrant hub of interaction and innovation. The flavors simmered into a dish that was not just a meal, but a narrative of shared experiences and unexpected connections. In that moment, I realized that the art of cooking was, at its heart, a form of dialogue, a conversation between tradition and innovation, between the known and the unforeseen. As the first taste of our creation melted on my tongue, I couldn't help but marvel at the way the day was evolving. The unexpected guest had not only enhanced the flavors of my dish, but also deepened the tapestry of relationships being woven that afternoon. In the spontaneous convergence of culinary arts and human connection, I found an echo of life's most profound truth. Sometimes, the best recipes are those crafted in the unplanned, the improvised, and the shared moments of genuine discovery. As dusk settled over the city, the streets transformed into a quiet canvas of twinkling lights and whispered secrets. I found myself drawn to a small, tucked-away cafe renowned for its live music and the sense of intimacy that permeated every corner. The low hum of conversations, intermingled with soft strains of a soulful guitar, set the stage for what promised to be an evening of quiet revelations and subtle encounters. Inside the cafe, ambient lighting painted gentle hues over patrons lost in their own thoughts, and the barista's warm smile was a beacon amid the evening chill. I ordered my usual, a meticulously prepared cortado, and found a seat near the window where the city's pulse was visible in its fleeting reflections. As I waited for my drink, my attention was inadvertently captured by a figure seated at a neighboring table. Ethan, a familiar presence whose ordinary demeanor I had come to recognize, now seemed imbued with a mysterious aura. Tonight, his posture was more reserved, his eyes reflecting an unexpected intensity. My gaze shifted back to the barista for a moment. A friendly conversation sparked up about the origins of the coffee beans and the subtle art of brewing perfection. In the midst of discussing the delicate balance of flavors, I felt a fleeting brush of warmth as our eyes met. For a moment, the background clatter of cups and murmured chatter faded into a quiet intensity, replaced by an unspoken understanding that something beyond the ordinary was stirring. It wasn't the barista's allure that caught me, but rather the reflection of my own curiosity mirrored in that shared glance, a delicate connection that hinted at unexplored possibilities. Across the room, Ethan's presence grew more pronounced. I noticed the way he leaned slightly forward, as if caught in a private reverie, and how the soft lighting played upon the contours of his face, revealing hints of vulnerability I hadn't seen before. The cafe, with its rich tapestry of murmurs and soft laughter, suddenly seemed to pulse with a different kind of energy. A secret code of glances and silent acknowledgments that only a few could decipher. In that suspended moment, I couldn't help but feel the gentle tug of anticipation. The interplay of light and shadow, conversation and quiet, had rendered the familiar environment strangely charged. There was a subtle shift in my awareness, a realization that the routine interactions of daily life might be giving way to something deeper, something that defied the conventional boundaries of friendship and familiarity. The brief collision of our gazes, set against the backdrop of a cozy haven and gentle acoustic chords, sparked a mix of excitement and trepidation within me. That night, as I sipped my cortado and listened to the soft symphony of the cafe, I was left with a lingering sense that the evening held secrets yet to be unfolded. The unexpected connection with the barista, combined with Ethan's transformed presence, set the stage for a night where every whisper, every shared glance, carried the promise of transformation. A hint that the dynamics of my relationships were on the brink of a profound and perhaps irreversible change. The following day unfolded in the quiet sanctuary of a small, independent bookstore nestled on a bustling Portland street. I wandered in, seeking solace among the dusty tomes and whispered stories of lives long past. The soft hum of a vintage record player in the background added a gentle, almost hypnotic ambiance, urging visitors to slow down and lose themselves in the labyrinth of ideas and memories. I meandered through the narrow aisles, tracing my fingertips along the spines of books that promised both escape and enlightenment. As I paused to examine a collection of essays on modern psychology, I felt a presence behind me, a familiar, yet subtly transformed figure. It was Ethan. Our eyes met unexpectedly, and for a brief second, the world around us blurred into insignificance. His gaze was intense, laced with an unreadable mixture of curiosity and vulnerability that contrasted sharply with the reserved demeanor he usually wore. It was as if the experience in the cafe had stirred something within him, an undercurrent of emotions that he was now struggling to contain. "Fancy meeting you here," he said, his voice low and measured, almost as if he were cautious not to disturb the fragile calm of the place. His words hung in the air, charged with unspoken meaning. I managed a small smile, one that tried to mask the inner tumult I felt. "I could say the same," I replied, my tone betraying a hint of playful irony. We gravitated towards a secluded corner where the soft lamplight cast gentle shadows over a table cluttered with open books and scattered notes. As we settled, our conversation took an unexpected turn. Ethan began to share his latest musings on the convergence of psychology and contemporary art, a subject he had recently delved into with a fervor that bordered on obsession. His words, though laced with scholarly references and nuanced insights, carried an undercurrent of irony that made each sentence resonate like a hidden confession. "You see," he explained, "our perceptions are as fragile as the art we interpret. The boundaries we construct in our minds are often illusions, easily shattered by a mere shift in perspective." His eyes flickered with passion as he spoke, and I sensed that this was not merely a discussion about theory, but a window into his inner conflicts. Every phrase he uttered seemed meticulously chosen, a deliberate effort to bridge the distance that had long separated our unspoken thoughts. I found myself challenging his ideas, countering with observations drawn from my own experiences, tales of fleeting encounters and moments of profound clarity. Our dialogue spiraled into a dance of intellect and emotion, each of us probing the depths of our convictions while skirting around the vulnerability of our true feelings. There was an inherent tension in the air, a push and pull that hinted at a burgeoning connection neither of us had dared to name outright. As our conversation deepened, the quiet clamor of the bookstore seemed to fade away, replaced by the palpable electricity of shared understanding and hesitant yearning. I noticed the subtle shift in Ethan's posture, the way he leaned in closer as if to shield his thoughts from prying eyes. His occasional glances held an intensity that stirred something raw and forbidden within me, evoking both excitement and apprehension. By the time we reluctantly parted ways, the encounter had left an indelible mark on both of us. Walking out into the crisp afternoon light, I felt a curious mix of exhilaration and trepidation. The bookstore meeting had unveiled a new dimension to our connection, a fragile yet compelling interplay of intellect and emotion that promised to alter the contours of our relationship. Each step I took echoed with the tension of unspoken words and the lingering sensation that something significant had quietly shifted between us. Later that night, the skies opened up with a torrential downpour, transforming the familiar streets of Portland into glistening, reflective avenues of light and shadow. The rain hammered relentlessly on the pavement, its steady rhythm creating an intimate backdrop for introspection and unplanned encounters. I decided to step out for a walk, letting the storm wash away the residue of the day's tensions and stir something new within me. Wrapped in a light jacket, I navigated the slick sidewalks, my pace matching the contemplative cadence of my thoughts. The night was alive with the murmur of rain on rooftops and the occasional distant hum of a car passing by. It was during this solitary wander that I unexpectedly found Ethan again. Standing under the awning of a quaint, nearly deserted cafe, he seemed momentarily caught between the downpour and the warmth of the neon-lit refuge. His posture was hesitant, as if the storm had nudged him to step into a space where vulnerability was not masked by the daytime's facade. Ethan's eyes, glistening with reflections of the rain-soaked city lights, met mine with an intensity that belied the casual setting. Without a word, he invited me to share his shelter. Inside, the cafe was dimly lit and imbued with the soft murmur of a few other night dwellers. The sound of the rain outside created a cocoon of seclusion, as if the world beyond the glass walls had dissolved into a blurred watercolor of grays and blues. We settled into a quiet corner, and as the warmth of the space enveloped us, Ethan's guarded demeanor began to soften. The storm outside had stirred something deep within him, a torrent of emotions that could no longer be contained. Leaning forward, His voice dropped to a sincere murmur. I've been carrying these doubts, these restless questions about who I am and what I truly desire. It's as if the storm has awakened the parts of me that I've kept hidden for too long. His confession hung in the air, mingling with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the quiet clatter of cups. Each word was measured yet raw, a glimpse into the inner workings of a man who had long concealed his vulnerabilities behind a veneer of intellectual reserve. I listened, captivated by the earnest cadence of his revelations. There was an unanticipated tenderness in his tone, a silent acknowledgement of fears, regrets, and the longing for connection. As the conversation deepened, Ethan spoke of his internal conflicts, the fear of change, the uncertainty of what it meant to let someone in, and the constant tension between societal expectations and the authentic self he yearned to embrace. His words resonated with an undeniable honesty that stirred a mix of empathy and a subtle, unspoken attraction within me. The rain, persistent and unyielding outside, mirrored the intensity of our exchange. It was as if each droplet carried with it a confession of its own, joining our voices in a delicate chorus of vulnerability. In that rain-soaked moment, the boundaries that had so carefully defined our lives began to blur. The sincerity of Ethan's admission, underlined by the storm's relentless insistence, transformed our interaction into something both fragile and profound. The night, illuminated by fleeting neon glows and the soft hum of whispered confidences, promised that sometimes the most transformative moments arise from the simplest acts of bravery, of opening up and sharing the truths that lie hidden in the heart. The soft glow of my apartment's interior welcomed me as I stepped through the door after that transformative night. The rain had subsided into a distant memory, yet its echoes lingered in my mind, a reminder of the emotional torrent that had just unfolded. I sat down at my worn wooden desk, the quiet ticking of a clock amplifying the dissonance between my thoughts and the soothing calm of my surroundings. Despite the tender confessions and vulnerable moments shared with Ethan, a persistent restlessness had begun to churn inside me. My heart, once buoyed by the raw honesty of the night, now wavered in uncertainty. I found myself tangled in an internal conflict. On one side, the allure of Ethan's emerging vulnerability and the captivating intimacy of his revelations. On the other, the steady, familiar presence of Mark, whose witty remarks and effortless humor had long provided a comforting counterbalance to my routine. As I tried to sort through the myriad of emotions, a mix of excitement, guilt, and longing, the shrill ring of my phone shattered the stillness. I hesitated for a heartbeat before answering, my fingers trembling slightly with anticipation. On the other end, Mark's voice broke through the silence, light and teasing, yet tinged with an undercurrent of something unspoken. "Hey, hope I'm not catching you in a reflective mood," he quipped, his tone brimming with playful sarcasm that belied the casual nature of his greeting. His words carried the familiar cadence that had always managed to cut through my clouded thoughts. Yet today they resonated with a curious sharpness. "I was just thinking about last night's escapades at work. You'd never believe the absurdity I witnessed, almost as if our mundane lives had taken a detour into a surreal comedy." I allowed a reluctant smile to form as I listened, my mind momentarily drifting back to the echoes of laughter shared in the hushed corridors of our daily lives. Mark's banter, effortless as it was, reminded me of a world where humor and lightness could diffuse the weight of uncertainty. Yet, beneath his playful tone, I detected a hint of mischief, a subtle reminder that he was well aware of the shifting dynamics between us. "Sounds like you've been starring in your own little circus," I replied, my voice betraying a trace of irony. As our conversation unfolded, Mark's comments wove a tapestry of jocular observations about the quirks of office life, interspersed with teasing hints that seemed to draw a line between what was said and what remained unspoken. Every joke and remark nudged me toward an inevitable question. Was I losing grip on something significant amid the allure of novelty? The call, unexpected yet perfectly timed, ignited an inner debate that churned relentlessly. Mark's lighthearted humor was a stark contrast to the intense, almost electric moments I'd just experienced with Ethan. In that fleeting space between laughter and silence, I realized that my heart was being pulled in two very different directions, each promise harboring its own mix of comfort and chaos. As the conversation drew to a close, Mark's farewell was punctuated with a final playful tease, leaving me alone with a swirling cocktail of emotions. I remained seated, the echo of his laughter mingling with my own introspective thoughts. In the quiet aftermath, I knew that the balance between duty and desire was more delicate than ever, a fragile equilibrium that would shape not only the rest of my day, but perhaps the contours of my future. Later that week, I found myself amidst the electric buzz of a contemporary art event in an expansive urban gallery, a place where the boundary between art and conversation dissolved into a vibrant melange of ideas and emotions. The space pulsed with a kinetic energy, a blend of avant-garde installations, provocative murals, and an eclectic crowd of friends and art enthusiasts. Every corner of the venue thrummed with life, every whispered commentary and heated exchange adding layers to the unfolding narrative of the evening. As I moved through clusters of animated discussions and impassioned debates, I unexpectedly encountered Ethan near a sprawling installation that melded light, sculpture, and shadow. He was not the reserved figure I had seen in quieter settings. Tonight, he was fully immersed, his eyes alight with fervor as he dissected the intricate symbolism embedded in the art before him. His gestures were animated, his voice resonating with a raw authenticity that commanded the attention of those nearby. Our eyes met across the room, an electric collision of glances that momentarily stilled the surrounding chatter. There was a subtle recognition in that brief exchange, a silent acknowledgement of the tensions and desires that had been simmering beneath the surface for some time. The gallery's ambient hum became a mere backdrop as our focus narrowed, drawing us into an intimate sphere of unspoken understanding. Without any prelude, Ethan approached, his stride confident and his expression earnest. "I always find that art forces us to confront our unspoken truths," he remarked, his tone both reflective and challenging. His words, succinct yet laden with meaning, set the stage for an exchange that was as cerebral as it was deeply personal. I responded with a measured smile, choosing my words with the care of someone who knew the stakes were high. And sometimes it exposes the boundaries we create, the limits we impose on ourselves and others, I countered, allowing the dialogue to navigate between abstract ideas and the uncharted territories of our own emotions. Our conversation evolved rapidly, delving into topics that ranged from the interplay of chaos and order in artistic expression to the very essence of freedom and human connection. Each sentence was a careful step along a razor's edge, revealing glimpses of vulnerability that I had long guarded. The intensity of our dialogue ignited something within me, a stirring of emotions that I had been trying to suppress. Amid the clamor of impassioned debates and the flickering lights of experimental installations, our interaction became a private realm where raw honesty and unguarded sentiment reigned supreme. In that moment, the conversation transcended the ordinary. It was an exploration of the uncharted, a delicate balancing act between the expected and the forbidden. As the evening wore on, our brief yet charged encounter left me with a mix of exhilaration and apprehension. The art around us, bold and unapologetic, mirrored the inner turmoil I felt, an amalgam of desire, restraint, and the ever-present possibility of transformation. The dynamic exchange with Ethan was a vivid reminder that even in a world defined by boundaries, the courage to question and redefine them could spark moments of profound revelation. After a long evening spent absorbing the complexities of a philosophy lecture, I stepped into the cool night with thoughts swirling about life's deeper meanings. The city had quieted, and its streets, usually so familiar, took on an almost cinematic quality under the glow of streetlights. My destination was an old museum on the outskirts of downtown, a place I seldom visited, its corridors filled with relics that whispered of bygone eras. That night, however, something about its quiet mystique beckoned me. Inside the museum, the ambiance was radically different from the scholarly halls of academia. Dim, ambient lighting cast long shadows over the exhibits, and the silence was punctuated only by the soft hum of an interactive installation that seemed to breathe life into history. As I wandered slowly along polished floors and time worn walls, the unexpected sound of hushed conversation caught my attention. Intrigued, I followed the murmurs, drawn deeper into the labyrinthine galleries. And there he was, Ethan. I almost didn't recognize him at first, not because he had changed, but because he was immersed in an entirely unfamiliar role. Gone was the reserved intellectual from earlier encounters. Here, among relics and modern art colliding in unexpected harmony, he was in his element. Ethan was standing before a large, kinetic installation that responded to the subtle movements of those nearby, its delicate interplay of light and sound creating a living tapestry of emotion. He moved with a quiet purpose, adjusting the settings with a focused intensity, as if coaxing hidden stories out of the technology and materials before him. Our eyes met across the room, and in that silent instant, the museum's surreal atmosphere bridged the gap between our separate worlds. He offered a tentative smile, one that carried both surprise and a shared recognition of our continued, unspoken connection. I approached him slowly, my footsteps echoing softly on the stone floor. "I didn't expect to see you here," I said, my voice a mixture of curiosity and warmth. The simplicity of the greeting belied the complex undercurrent of emotion that had been steadily growing between us.